welcome back to our year-long celebration of the TV show Smallville, celebrating 20 years of this phenomenal show. This season, not so phenomenal, as you could probably tell by the tone of my voice. We're excited to talk about this season, but we're going to have a lot to say about this season, especially in terms of the new characters and what actually happens. We'll probably get into some background too, because there was a lot of not I don't want to say production issues, but there was something that happened at that time that possibly hindered the season. But this is going to be structured like our previous reviews, what we like, what we don't like, episode by episode breakdown, just general thoughts as well. So I'll get started with Pat's general thoughts on season 7, and this might take a while for both of us, just so you know. So what are your thoughts on season 7?
Season 7 of Smallville, I think it's safe to say, I know for me at least, probably for you, I think it's the weakest season of the show.
Yep.
I think it's the messiest season of the show. I think it's the most incoherent season of the show. I also think it's where the show is really floundering to find its way.
Yeah.
And it was when I felt most like, is this guy ever going to be Superman? Like, as I was watching it, I'm like,
I think this was a time too where it ran the risk of it's like, do we know if it's going to come back for another season?
Yeah, I mean, I think when 8 started, it was kind of thought to be maybe the last season.
Especially since they moved 8 to Fridays.
Yeah, like it was supposed to kind of go there to die. And I think a lot of that had to do with this season kind of not being very good. They tried to spice this season up initially with the introduction of Kara slash Supergirl, which just on principle to me was a mistake. I think if you're doing a show about the beginning of Superman, we're supposed to be like on this hero's journey with this guy who has powers that like other people don't have, or if they do, they're usually bad. And all of a sudden, there's this character that shows up who can do everything Clark can do, except even more because she can fly.
Dude, it's not only that. Hasn't she like been like suspended in like animation for like 18 years or something?
Yeah, she was frozen. Her ship was frozen underneath the dam that broke at the end of season 6.
Yeah.
And just like Kara shows up, and all of a sudden, whenever she's on screen, Clark becomes a background character or like a mentor character, which is weird in a show where he's supposed to be like the up and coming hero. Why is he taking a mentor role?
Well,
It's very weird.
Not only that, and then it just seems like she's always like trying to get him to like at least like try and like fly, I guess, or like try and develop like his powers further. And then he'll be willing to do it, and then at the last second he'll be like, "No, this is stupid."
Yeah, I always hated that scene where I remember even in like the episode description at the time, it was like Kara tries to teach Clark how to fly, and it's like, not really. She suggests it, and he's like, "Nah, this is dumb. You take the sky, I'll take the ground." But just by the fact that like she could fly, it just was like this like thing that pointed out like, oh yeah, Clark still can't do that, and it really sucks that he can't. Like it just made Clark look bad, and then also Kara's whole role on the show, we just kind of repeated storylines we already had with Clark. Like Kara saves Lex from a drowning in a car, just like Clark. Then she tries to like adapt to her powers. We have to see her learn how to use heat vision, just like Clark. She wears flannel and blues and reds. I'm like, so are we like replacing Clark like in his own show? Like, I don't know. Like Supergirl in general, I'm not the biggest fan of like in all media because I think she's way too similar to Clark in general. Whereas Batgirl, for instance, is like a completely different character than Batman, despite having similar names and stuff. But Supergirl, in a lot of ways, is Superman, but a girl. And I just kind of have a problem with Supergirl in general, like as far as like being an original character. And this just didn't help. And like I felt she brought nothing to the show, and you could really feel that the writers probably realized that really quickly because
I feel like it was within like a couple episodes.
Yeah, because I think it's episode 4 or 5, but immediately she gets mad at Clark and flies away, and she's gone for a few episodes, and then she comes back for a few episodes, and then she gets teleported away and gets amnesia, so she's gone for a few episodes, and then Brainiac takes her, and she's gone for a few, and I'm just like, they just kept getting rid of her. She'd come back, and they're like, get her away, get her out of here. It was just a bad decision.
They also did that weird like beauty pageant episode with her. It was just like that was like the moment I think where it was just like they don't know what to do with her.
I felt like she didn't belong in the show at all, and I think they realized that, like I said, pretty quickly. I don't know. She didn't add anything to the show, and if anything, she hurt Clark as a character,
I
but just
think
being there.
I think it would have worked better for me if she was like a 1 or 2 episode guest star. If
Yeah,
you're
maybe,
gonna
yeah.
do Supergirl, or maybe even like a 3 episode guest star, because she comes back later in season 10, or no, eight and
Comes
10.
back in 8 and then 10 later.
Yeah, yeah, which I was fine with, because I was just like, you know what, like we're actually like progressing Clark towards like Superman in those seasons. So it's like, of course, like you've already established this relationship between him and Supergirl. I mean, they did a piss poor job at it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, they
but
never seem to
but
really be that
like
close.
but like stuff like that, because I feel like in those seasons she doesn't necessarily get in the way, you know?
Not really, no. I mean, yeah, she's incorporated a bit better. I still have a problem with in season 10 when her disguise is the Clark Kent disguise, and I'm like,
Yeah.
Can Clark do something first? This is his show. We're supposed to be watching Superman. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I just thought Kara, for me, like that's just one big problem in season 7, and that's not even like
See,
everything.
not to mention too, like nothing against Laura Vandervoort, but she's not a good actress either.
I mean, I'm sure she's fine in other things,
Yeah,
but I never really bought into her as
I
Kara.
hated the way she said Kal-El too. She was like Kal-El.
Hello. I don't know. The whole backstory where it was just kind of, I don't know. It just wasn't very good. I just, everything with her storyline was blah.
And it was just like Supergirl's like refusal to call Clark Clark. She kept calling him Kal-El, and he's like, "No, call me Clark."
I
I'm
mean,
not calling.
that's fine for like a little like gag, but it
But like
just,
it was a running thing though.
yeah, I don't know. It just, Kara never fit into this show. I don't think she ever should have been in Smallville.
Yeah,
Or if she was, maybe like hint at her in like the last season when Clark's like pretty much Superman.
yeah,
But it just felt like, I don't know. It hurt Clark, and Clark was already in this season just sitting his ass on the
yeah.
farm
He
the
was just
whole
moping
season.
around.
We had playing house with Lana. Don't even get me started on Lana this season, because this is when she
Uh,
really became
uh,
like, I was like, no, like you
I
need to
feel
be
like
off this show now.
I feel like Kristen Kruk knew it too. She was like, "What are we doing?" I feel like she was like, "What the hell is this plot line you gave me this
Well,
season?"
it all started with like the beginning of the season. She's like hiding out in China from Lex because she like blew up her clone or whatever and faked her death. And she's like, you see China, there's all these people walking in a crowd, and then there's Lana with this terrible blonde wig standing out. Like I could see her in the crowd shot. I'm like, you're
Yeah,
trying to hide from Lex, so you make yourself super conspicuous.
which honestly is like weird because like I think Kristen Krug is like half like Chinese or something.
She's definitely Asian of some like, and I
Yeah,
just think it was a weird like visual choice for that director to make, probably, or the writer, I don't know. But I was like, why a blonde wig? Like, and it's this big dramatic moment where she
I
pulls
got
off her
an
wig.
idea, guys. We're gonna write in the script terrible blonde wig.
It didn't work.
I could crash and burn, but maybe at the end of this road I might catch a glimpse of me. So 3 months and I'm still breathing. Been a long road since those hands I left my tears in, but I know.
And then just from that point, it just got even worse because she comes
That
back
was
to Smallville and she's like, "Oh, Clark, yeah, we're gonna be together finally now that I know your secret. So I'm just gonna play house and be in the kitchen all the time. But
which is a
secretly, I'm
terrible.
gonna be fucking running this foundation with hidden cameras, spying on Lex and kidnapping him in a cabin or Lionel with a bear trap." And I'm like,
Oh,
"What
yeah.
the shit is going on?" Like, it's so
I remember that moment though. He pulls the bear trap off of him. I was like,
it's brutal.
"It's
But like
brutal,"
she
but
shows up at that cabin and she's like, oh, she like knocks Lionel out with a shovel and she's like, to like tie him back up or whatever. And then she cuts on the phone. She's like, "Hi Clark, I'll be right home." And I'm like, this is so stupid. And that's not even getting into the episode where she gets Clark's powers and goes on a revenge fucking spree against Lex. I'm like, what are we doing with Lana? It's like I cheered when Brainiac fucking did like the like horrible thing to her
I
where
know.
she like is in a coma. Like,
You know what made it worse? Up until that point, she was in every episode this season. I think.
I don't know, but
Pretty sure, because then she goes away for those 4 episodes, and then she leaves Clark that like tearful goodbye
the
video. Like it's like, oh, thank God. But then in season 8, like it's you find out that it's like,
she's-
yeah,
but I mean, it didn't help too that like halfway through the season we'll get to because it's actually a positive of the season overall. But she can't tell Bizarro's Clark, even though it's super damn obvious that it's
I know.
something is wrong at least. But she's
I
like,
know.
no, maybe Chloe, you don't know him as well as you think. I'm like, how about you get the fuck out, Lana? Because you don't know what's going on. You don't like it's so annoying. Like she was terrible in this
No,
season.
I hated Lana. This
Like
was like the point of no return for me with Lana.
Yeah, that was my thing. I was just like, okay, she can leave. Like season 6, I already didn't like her, and then like season 7, I'm like, please, like I felt like she was holding Clark back. Like
Yeah.
literally, it's like he's stuck on this goddamn farm with Lana, and I'm like, he needs something. And thankfully, the writers finally were like, well, Lana left, and they're like, okay, so now Clark can work at the Daily Planet. I'm like, cool, something new. Thank you, something that pushes Clark forward. And yeah, Lana became more of a hindrance than a help as far as like a character
Yeah.
over time. But
Yeah.
another big problem with this season is just it's all over the place. Like there's so many plot lines that go nowhere.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
You think a writer strike was the big part of that? Because looking at it now, like as I said in I think our review for season 6, looking at it now, like I get that the writer strike like hindered probably a lot of progress that they were going to make with this season. But do you think it was like the sole blame? Because you still almost have like a full season's worth of episodes. Like every season up to this point was either 22 episodes or in the case of season 2, 23, season 1, 21. Like this is 20 episodes. Like so they're too shy. So it's not like 2 episodes were going to fix the problems anyway.
I think they had Veritas, the general structure of that episode, which I think is 15, and like the was supposed to kind of be the finale as far as like the broad strokes, except Lex was going to kill Lionel at the end of that episode to be the finale. I think they had all that and they did it, and then they got the extra episodes and they're like, oh shit, what do we do like to fill the time?
Could you imagine if Descent was the finale?
That would have been interesting. I feel like it's not big enough scale wise though. It's a very personal episode. I think they would have Descent could have been a cool premiere, I think. But like honestly, I think it would have been stronger if Veritas was the finale and you ended it with Lionel dying. I feel like that's a bigger deal than like what we eventually end up getting in the finale.
Oh hey, you're the Traveler. Let's have Clark and Lex face off in the fortress.
Like before I get like too angry, just like the season could not decide what it wanted to do. It was like Supergirl kept coming in and out, and then it was like, oh, we got this great villain in the premiere, Bizarro, and he's awesome, and oh, we'll bring him back, and we'll get to that. But that was like one of the coolest things ever. And then they could throw him away immediately, and then Brainiac comes back, doesn't really do much except kind of like go around and be menacing to people, and then you get like the Lex stuff, which was cool, but it's wrapped in with the Veritas stuff, which could have been cool, but they never remotely set up ever before. Like they were like, oh yeah, all of a sudden, like they even changed the goddamn window panel on stained glass window behind Lex to include that Veritas symbol, and they pretended like it had been there the whole time. But if you watch like 4 episodes prior, it's not there. It's just the Luthor symbol. And they're like, oh yeah, it was there the whole time. I'm like, no, it wasn't. Shut up.
Not to mention you had the whole Grant Gabriel thing too.
It was a weird season, man.
It was lots of great Lex moments.
Yeah, I mean, there's the thing. I love Lex Descent stuff, but honestly, Michael Rosenbaum for a majority of the season felt like he wanted to be anywhere else. Yeah. He felt asleep in any scene he had with Kara, and any scene he had in like the first half.
I would be asleep in any scene I had with Kara too.
I know, but just in general, it looked like Rosenbaum, like Lex, and I'll say this for season 6 as well. Lex lost some of his like oomph. Like he just was kind of there, and like Descent was like an exception. It was like, oh, welcome back, Rosenbaum. You've been sleeping for half a season. Like he just felt like he didn't want to be, and I'm sure he was sick of it by that point because he ended up leaving. But like he just felt like he was kind of asleep for a lot of his scenes, just kind of like, oh, yep, I'm going to China to confront Lana, and oh yeah, here's this. I'm like,
Dude, I always hated like the whole Lana reveal too, because I don't think because I think the whole China thing where she's like blending in China is the premiere, and then the episode where Lex actually goes to China is episode 2, I think.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and then episode 3 is where Lana comes back to the farm. Ugh.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's just
It's a mess of a season. Because then you got even like the Blue Crystal, which are Kara's ship, and there's all these things that are like big
Dude,
plot points that go
then you
nowhere.
have they have like Blue Kryptonite with like Daxter and
Yeah,
all
Bra-
those
and
characters.
Brainiac wants to go back in time, and it's like, what the hell are we doing? Like it's such like it's all over the place.
Yeah. I mean, the writer's strike could probably be like a direct result of that.
I'm sure it was a factor, but the first half of the season isn't even good.
I know.
Like they had already
That's the
written that
thing.
before the strike.
That's the thing, yeah.
Yeah, this was far and away like I struggle when I've rewatched Smallville. Season 7 is hard to get through because I just want to get to 8 where Clark actually progresses into
and then
something
skip
else.
the last couple episodes of 8, right?
Yeah, well, the last like episode really like
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah,
get to that. That was rough.
Here's my thing with 7. Like, it's all over the place, and I think it's by far the worst season. But like the weird thing is though is you have some great episodes mixed in. It's just they're followed up by like a string of like 2 or 3 like really terrible ones.
That's the thing. I feel like season 7 has like 5 good episodes.
Yeah, Gemini.
The rest of it are like
Persona's a good episode up until like a certain point.
They make a weird decision, but overall it's a good episode. Bizarro was a good episode. Descent is a good episode. Apocalypse is a good episode.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it's all not great.
Sleeper is a sleeper.
Yeah, when we do the episode by episode, like
yeah,
it's gonna be a rough journey, man.
Yeah,
season 7 it's rough. Like it's
not fun.
No,
it's not fun. Yeah,
it's just, and I can't get over how like what's the word I'm looking for? It feels like Clark's just treading water. Yeah. Like it felt like were too scared to like progress him further. And it felt like Alfred Goff and Miles Millar, because this was their last season as showrunners. Yeah. It felt like they were stuck on the old want of, people want to see Clark and Lana together on the farm. It's like, no, we wanted that in like season 2 or 3. We don't want that in season 7 when like Lois Lane is now a reporter at the Daily Planet. I'm like, no, we want to see Clark progress. And immediately in the finale of this, was it the finale? Yeah, the finale, she gives Clark like a job application or whatever for the Daily Planet. And then the premiere of season 8, the moment he joins the Daily Planet, it felt like the whole show suddenly got this huge breath of life. And I'm like, holy shit, this is good again. It's better than ever. And it's like, season 7, there was none of that feeling. It was just like, I was just waiting for Bizarro to come back.
And then he came back and got ruined.
I know.
Dude, I'm basically the same with you on season 7. Like, it's hard to get through. Like,
it really is.
Like, I mean, like, it sucks that, like, I keep bringing up the writer's strike, because I definitely do think it hindered it, but not to the extent that I think people think it did.
Right. I mean, it definitely played a factor, but I don't think it can just be like, oh yeah, that season sucked because of the writer's strike.
It's not like Supernatural, where it's like you were 6 episodes short, and then you had, like, the first 12, like, Justin Bellow in Supernatural felt like it could have been the finale. And then, like, all of a sudden, like, you got, like, 4 more episodes, and then it was, like, yeah, the end of season 3 of Supernatural feels rushed, but it's, like, I kind of give it a pass, because it's, like, they didn't have enough time to wrap everything up.
Yeah, or to properly set things up, yeah.
Like, they literally lost, like, 6 episodes worth, which could have helped a lot by wrapping that up.
Yeah.
You're only losing 2 episodes in season 7 of Smallville. And as we said, the season wasn't good to begin with anyway. So it's like, you're not losing that much time to, like, wrap anything up. And, like, what do you have to wrap up? You just introduce Veritas out of, like, nowhere. I mean, I think there was obviously, like, probably hints of it, like, back in,
there's always been, like, Swan and Lionel connections, but...
Yeah, but, like, not to, like, this extent. Because, like, it just feels like, I think it's 14 and 15, Traveler and Veritas. Those just feel like I feel like those are connected, but, like, I feel like they were like, all right, now we can just move on from that story, where it's like, there's so many more questions than there are answers. And then you just move on to Descent, you know? I'm just like, didn't really work for me.
Yeah, it's just a rough season. It's not very cohesive. It's very all over the place.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's rough.
Even the DVD cover is like knows it's bad. It's so plain.
Yep.
We do episode by episode breakdown.
Yeah,
now?
let's do it. It's gonna be rough.
Oh,
But the premiere, just to start, Bizarro is an amazing episode.
yes.
I loved the premiere so
Yeah,
much. I mean, the final fight between Clark and Bizarro could have been cooler, but I like the idea of it. Of like, well, Bizarro in general. I'll rant about him a few times as we talk about the episodes. But when he shows up in the premiere of this, and he's just like, Tom Welling puts on like a deeper cadence in his voice, and he just seems way creepier. And like he's like, "Oh, I know everything about you, Clark. Like you wasted your life or whatever." And like when he gets knocked into that like fucking phone line thing, and he's like impaled, and that guy's like, "Hey, buddy, are you okay?" And he jumps off the thing and immediately burns the guy alive with heat vision. I'm like, "Holy shit, this guy's gonna be awesome."
Dude, it sucks too because it's such a good premiere and it sets up like what could be a really good season too.
He was great.
Yeah, and then we get John Jones returns in that episode.
Yeah, Martian Manhunter, who, like you said before, criminally underused, continues to be underused. But I like too that episode finally like fully like we had hints of it before in like the Perry White episode in season 3 that like the sun affects Clark.
Yeah.
But this was like the full confirmation, like, yeah, Clark, you get your powers from the sun, and Bizarro's affected differently, opposite the way you are. So kryptonite makes him stronger, sunlight makes him weaker, which is why his face sometimes cracks.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was cool. Like I loved the premiere. I thought it got me really hyped for the season, except for like the Lana reveal and China and Kara, like whatever, or standing on top of the Smallville thing with her Supergirl pose. I'm like, whatever.
That's
like,
off.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah. Episode 2 was called Kara.
Yeah, not a fan. All I remember is her being, stay away from my stuff. And she like kicks Clark. I'm like,
dude, can you like imagine too, like just explaining to everybody that you randomly have like this cousin that just popped up out of nowhere? Like, I mean, I get it's easy to explain to like Chloe and now Lana, but like, don't you think Lois should be like, you never told me you had any cousins?
Man, it's just Karen, like I said, never fit, and this whole I don't know. The whole episode of Kara is pretty much just her being like, "Cal, you're not Kal-El. Kal-El was a baby." I'm like, time fucking happened.
You were frozen in a spaceship for 18
I don't know what to
years.
tell you.
3 was Fierce.
I hate that episode with every fiber of my being. It's really stupid.
Yeah, that's the beauty pageant one.
The
right?
beauty pageant one where the queens are like meteor freaks and they're like, "We're looking for some buried time capsule." I'm like, whatever. Like, I don't care about this.
Well, dude, what was the reason for Kara wanting to go to the beauty pageant so that she could like fit in?
Yeah.
Yeah, because like she's basically like in the previous episode, like you were saying, she was basically like, "Get out of my stuff," and then Clark's just like, "You gotta fit in and like learn how to adapt as a human being." So like her idea of adapting as a human being is a beauty pageant. I'm like, nobody is going to go to a beauty pageant to fit in.
I don't know. It's just, I don't know, man. That episode is awful. I hate watching it.
I do too. It's bad.
Yeah, because the queens too, they all had like elemental powers, like the Ghost Rider henchmen. There's like the wind one and the ice one. And...
episode 4 is Cure, which is a weird one. The one with Dean Cain.
Yeah,
it's like a weird doctor.
Yeah, he's Dean Cain playing Curtis Knox.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a character in the comics, an immortal character like that, named Vandal Savage.
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of that. It was a cool concept. It's a weird episode, kind of. He's like stealing meteor freak organs to like help his wife or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a weird episode, but I like it overall. I think it's one of the better ones of the season, probably.
Season 5 is Action.
Episode 5?
Or, yeah. Episode 5.
Action is... It's whatever. It's like, it's kind of fun, I guess.
Action movie being filmed in Smallville. Because why? Yeah. Like, why would an action movie be filmed in... Why would any movie be filmed in Smallville?
Yeah.
What's
her name? Christina, whatever, Milian?
Yeah, Christina Milian.
Yeah, she's in all those, like, Lifetime Christmas movies. So anytime I'm, like, on Christmas season, I'm watching one of those with Casey. There's one where she gets, like, trapped inside a snow globe.
I gotta watch that.
Yeah, it's
I
it's
feel like
funny.
I feel like she's gonna make like a bunch of like Disney Plus like Christmas
Maybe.
movies now. I don't know. That seems to be Anna Kendrick's thing now.
Yeah,
6 is Lara. I mean, it was cool seeing like Helen Slater, but like
sure. Yeah, let's see
I don't
Helen
care about
Slater, who's in
I
a
don't
terrible Supergirl movie.
I really don't care about anybody else though.
No, it's just the whole thing is just. I mean, you even got they cast. I don't know the actor's name, but whoever played Alistair in Supernatural
Yeah,
is Zarel. And
yeah.
he's like built up to be like this big bad guy, and then he shows up for like one episode and kind of like gets beat.
Doesn't he give Clark the blue kryptonite?
Yeah, he puts like a blue kryptonite ring on him, and it's stupid. There's like clones of Clark's mom and Zarel. I'm like, this is what are we doing? It's so dumb.
Episode 7. Is this your least favorite episode?
Is this with Lana with the powers?
Yep,
It's
Wrath.
atrocious. It's so bad.
Lana, you have to be careful with the speed thing. It's a little...
I was moving and everything else was frozen. Clark, this is so cool. How come you didn't tell me it was like this?
One of those had to be there kind of things. Listen, Lana, it took me a long time to adjust.
Relax, Clark. You live with these abilities every day. I think I can handle it.
Is this your least
like
favorite episode of the season?
probably like it's just they redo that scene from well that whole episode from season 1 with
Yeah.
the electricity. Yeah,
Yeah.
and like she gets Clark's powers, except he also still has his powers.
Yeah.
So then they can have sex. Oh, and they're shaking the earth, and I'm like, this is so, like Chloe's at like the talon, and the whole earth is like shaking because Lana and Clark are having sex. And I'm like, this is so terrible. And then Lana's immediately she puts on like black leather and puts a ponytail up. And she's like, I'm gonna go kick Lex's ass. I'm like,
Well, dude, it's also like I don't know if it's this episode. I don't think it is. But like you find out that she's like the head of like this like ISIS foundation, which looking at it now, kind of probably should not have named that ISIS, but
yeah, that whole ISIS foundation I always hated. I felt like it.
dude, and they kept bringing it back in like the later seasons. I was like, I don't care about this.
Yeah, they're like, oh yeah, Lana has this like foundation where she's trying to help people that Lex wronged, and then really she's like, you remove this wall, and there's all these computers, because suddenly Lana is like a tech genius, and she's like hacking into shit. I'm like, that was Chloe's thing. What are we doing?
I know.
Like, it's so bad, dude. It's
Yeah.
so bad.
The next episode's actually a fairly good one. Blue Kryptonite. I like when they introduce new kryptonites.
Yeah, this one it was kind of like, oh, here's the ceremonial ring, Clark, and he's like, or Kal-El, and he's like, okay, and he puts it on. It's like, oh shit, I don't have powers anymore, and I can't get it off. And Zarel's like, haha, and like throws him across like a
It's
street
decent.
or
It's
whatever.
not horrible, but it's decent.
Anything too focused on Kara, man, I was just like, get out. In this episode, she vanished for like 4 episodes. Like, thank God.
Oh, dude, we gotta go back a couple episodes because we didn't talk about Grant Gabriel.
Oh yeah, Grant Gabriel. Okay, so you got Jimmy Olsen from Batman v Superman. If you remember, he's in that movie before he gets shot in the head.
You're CIA.
No, no,
You brought him here.
no, he's a photographer. No,
It's okay, Lois. Ilaan tun tarayan na nakwa generalin. Ile turagat inna da kagatanna timignit.
He's working with the CIA in that, isn't he?
Listen, as bad, I don't know which is worse: how Smallville handled Jimmy's death, or how BVS handled Jimmy's death. Like, what the fuck? Why do people hate Jimmy Olsen? But yeah, that guy. He plays Grant Gabriel, who's the new editor
I
in
always thought he
chief.
talked weird.
He does talk very. He's like, "Hey, Lane, blah 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 blah."
You better write me your story, Lane. It's not gonna write itself at 7 a.m.
But really, it's like him and Lois get into like a relationship, which I didn't like because it makes it seem like Lois only becomes like the top reporter because she's sleeping with her editor. I'm like, that's not like good. Like, and like you get that, and if that's not bad enough, all of a sudden it's like, I'm Lex's brother. I'm like, oh no. And it's
I'm
like,
a clone of Julian Luthor.
I'm a clone of Julian. And I'm like, okay.
See, the death scene is handled very well, though.
Yes. On the one hand, it's cool because it's like showing you like, oh, Lex is crazy. He will go very far into creepy sciences to make himself feel better. Like that shows how bad he's gotten. Like I like that, but at the same time, whenever you do like cloning like that, you're getting into some murky waters of like good storytelling, and it's like Grant is like they don't really develop it though. Like you find out he's Julian, and then like 2 episodes later he's dead. And like he's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna tell Lionel I'm his son, and he goes and tells Lionel, and Lionel's like, great, let's go get steak. And they're going to like eat steak, and then they're on their way home, and all of a sudden they get mugged, and Julian gets fucking blown away.
And then you just have that scene of Lex like outside of the mansion in the rain. Such a great scene, though.
It is really good.
Yeah.
Son, give me your money now. All right. We don't want any trouble. Now! Okay, just please take it and get out of here.
Because I think that happened
here. That's another storyline that season 7 is like juggling like 15 storylines.
I know. Yeah.
It doesn't go anywhere because I think only 1 episode later, Lionel's like, I want to find out what happened to who killed my son. But then they like never mention Greg Gabriel ever again.
Poor Lionel. So 9 was Gemini. Really good episode. You want to tell the folks out there the story at the end of this episode for you?
Gemini holds a special place in my heart. Not only is it a Christmas episode, so it puts me in the Christmas mood. You got a weird plot, which you don't really need to talk about, where another one of Julian's clones is like old, and he like has a bomb on the Daily Planet elevator, and he's like, I'm gonna blow it up unless you write a story about like the cloning. And then like Chloe and Jimmy are trapped on the elevator, and like there's all that stuff happening. It's like, okay, whatever, cool. But the real highlight of the episode. So Clark at the end of Blue goes to the fortress. He gets into like an argument with Jor-El. You see a bright flash of light. You don't know what happens. Gemini takes place like a couple weeks later, and Clark comes back to the farm, and Lana's like, oh my God, Clark. And he's like acting kind of weird. He's like, hey, Lana, like, yeah.
I've always loved that scene where he's like walking through the Daily Planet and like Chloe's talking to him. He's
that's not till Persona.
That's not till Persona.
That's when you already know.
Oh, okay.
Before that, it's more subtle where he's just acting a little off. Like just enough where I remember just thinking like, why is Tom Welling acting like weird? Like, why is he like acting kind of stilted? And like the whole episode, he seems kind of like, like kind of, and he's like, oh, Lana, I'd really like to see your like ISIS thing. And she's like, oh, really? Okay. And he's like, wow, yeah, Lana, this is crazy. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? And then like at the end of the episode, well, then you see him save Chloe and Jimmy on the elevator. And at one point, he seems to jump up the stairwell of the Daily Planet, but it looks more like flying. And I was like, huh. But I didn't really think much of it. I'm like, oh, cool, like a super jump. Okay. And then like he saves Jimmy and Chloe. And then at the very end of the episode, he's hugging Lana in the sunlight. And listen, I loved Bizarro in the premiere. And the fact he didn't die, I was like, okay, he can come back someday. They're like, oh, we trapped him on the sunny side of Mars. I'm like, okay, like cool. But I didn't expect him to be back that quickly. I thought it'd be like the finale or something. Yeah. And all of a sudden it was like he's hugging Lana and his face just or whatever, like the like cracking.
Flashes.
And I was like, oh, and me being like in 7th grade, 6th grade, or whatever, I'm like, holy shit! And I was like rolling on the floor crying. I was so shocked. I'm like, how did I not see that? Like, oh my God, he's back. And I was so excited. And like, you look back and it's like, oh yeah, Clark went to the fortress wearing his red jacket. But when he came back, he was wearing his blue jacket. We should have known. But yeah, I was like beside myself at the time. Like,
I remember, I think you told me your mom was like, what's happening?
she's like, are you okay? And I'm like, he's back. Like, it was such a big like cliffhanger moment. And you had to wait like a month and a half or whatever for like, it was like the mid-season break. And I was so excited to have Bizarro back. Like, it just, the whole season hadn't been that good up until then. And then I was so hyped. I'm like, Bizarro's back. Hell yeah. And like, I was so excited.
Yesterday when I saw you in the barn, it was like I fell in love with you all over again.
It was just a great cliffhanger. Even to this day, it's one of the most like shocking TV viewings.
It's probably one of the most well-written moments in this season.
Yeah, it was a clever like twist where it was like in the whole episode, the fact it's called Gemini, there's like the Project Gemini, and there's like Gemini means twins. So you're thinking about like Julian and
a triple meaning.
Yeah, Bizarro's there, and it just makes it make even more sense.
Yeah,
but yeah, it showed Bizarro's there. Not only is he there, Clark is frozen in the fortress. And you're like, what the hell's going on? Like, it was such a good cliffhanger.
Yeah. So that leads us into 10, Persona, which is a good episode up until a certain point.
Yeah, Persona I really like overall. I love the Bizarro scenes where he's pretending to be Clark. And he's like, oh, Lana, let's go to Paris. I'm like, yeah, he's like doing that to Chloe behind her.
Yeah.
And like, there's just Tom Welling does a really good job playing somebody pretending to be Clark.
You also have scenes with Bizarro and Brainiac in this.
Yeah, they bring Brainiac back, which was long overdue.
Yeah, they're going through like some like homeless.
Well, yeah, he lives in suicide slums, and he's like feeding off of like homeless people to like regenerate himself.
To homeless people.
Yeah, and it's like it's a cool like I love those scenes because Brainiac looks really gross and like sweaty because he's still not fully powered yet.
Yeah,
and he's like, I love just the back and forth because it's cool. It's like two of Superman's like arch enemies, like besides Lex, like guys in his like top 5 villains
that we haven't seen in like any movie,
any live action thing. Like really, like Brainiac and Bizarro walking like together, talking about conspiring together, and like Brainiac obviously having the advantage over him. And just I love the dialogue in those scenes. It's like, oh, I have a problem. The yellow sun, it turns my skin to stone. He's like, oh, well, try good sunscreen, a wide-brimmed hat, perhaps. Like, it's just so good. And, like, in the moments where, like, because the rest of the episode, Bizarro is pretending to be Clark, but in those scenes, he brings back that, like, deeper voice, and he's more, like, scary. He's like, oh, like, are you telling me the truth? And he's, like, freaking out at Brainiac. And then I thought it was clever, because it turns out Brainiac is playing both sides. He's using Bizarro and he's using Clark, who gets unfrozen. I also always love the scene where Bizarro flies to the fortress and he's yelling at Jor-El. You're just a voice, Jor-El. What are you gonna do? Lecture me to death? It's just so good. And he shouldn't have done that because then Jor-El's like, oh shit, the Phantom's back. Clark, you're unfrozen now. But like, also, man, they ruined Lana, like I said before, with her not knowing. How do you not know? When has Clark ever been like, oh yeah, let's go to Paris. I'll fly you there myself. I'm like, Clark doesn't talk that way. Like,
yeah.
And then it makes it so much worse because there's that scene when Clark comes back and he sees like there's the table set for 2. He's like, what the fuck? And Lana's like, hey, Clark, how's it going? And he's like, Lana, I've been gone for like weeks. She's like, no, I know the fortress makes time act weird, but check the clock. You were here earlier. And he's like, no, Lana, I wasn't. And she's like, oh. She's like, oh, what? She's like, no, remember you told me you were going to take me to Paris. And he's like, no. He's like, do you not fucking know me at all? Like, I thought you were my true love, and you don't.
Well, that's the thing, because like they do something similar with Lois in season 10, where it's like immediately she knows.
About Clark Luthor?
Yeah.
Lana, please.
Stay away from me.
would never hurt you. Look at me, I'm the same person you've been with all this time.
You're a monster.
You told me that you're happier than you've ever been. I made you feel that way, Lana, not Clark.
You pretended to be him just so that you could...
Listen, when I first came to Smallville, the only thing that mattered was my own survival. But that all changed when I met you. Spent the last month telling me that you finally felt like we were meant to be together. Don't listen to him, Lana. I know what's in his mind, Lana. He doesn't love you like I do.
That's a lie! You're lying, Clark. To yourself. You're so worried about doing the right thing, you don't even see it.
You know he won't commit his life to you like I will. You know that.
Oliver, do it! Now! Do it!
Nighty night.
I'm me. Lois, please. Tell them. I'm me.
Stop! Stop! It's him. It's you.
Yeah, because you if you know that person, you should, like, Chloe could tell. She could tell something was wrong with Clark, and she realized it was scary, like, and she defended herself. But yeah, Lana had no idea, and I think that was like the nail in the coffin for me, where I'm like, can we just end this relationship? Because it's clearly not for the best.
It's not very healthy.
But Bizarro was great, and I loved their version of him. He wasn't like any other Bizarro and any other thing. Like, usually Bizarro is like an experiment or like kind of a tragic figure. And I liked in the premiere and what it seemed like in Gemini, I'm like, oh, this guy's just evil. And I thought, oh, if Bizarro has been using Lana this whole time, he's going to be one of the best villains on the show. And instead, they pull the bullshit where they're like, oh, Bizarro actually fell in love with Lana. And I'm like, no, why? Why? And like, to the point where his last line is like, I love you.
To make it worse, though, they have Lana kill Bizarro.
Yep. You set up a Bizarro Clark rematch. You don't follow through, and instead you have her just put the kryptonite in his hand and he dies. Like, that's such a late step.
It's so stupid too, because that whole scene you see both Bizarro and Clark, and it's like he's lying to you, Lana. Lana, don't listen to him. No, Lana, I love you. Remember? It's like, fuck off.
You said the happiest moment was when you were with me or whatever. I'm like, that whole thing they just ruined. I'm like, Bizarro was cooler when he was ripping out people's guts and burning people alive with heat vision and being like crazy. And I'm like, if he had been using her the whole time, that would have been so much better. And instead it was like, oh no, I'm actually in love with her. And I'm like, okay, Lana, you go off with Bizarro, then you can have your perfect Clark. You can live in Paris together. I don't care. And instead,
It
like,
should have happened.
they ruined Bizarro in the last second. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Also, Jimmy Olsen's actor from the original movies
Mark McClure
was Daxter. And Brainiac is like, yeah, I'm damaged and I need you to fix me. And he's like, oh, I can't do that. He's like, oh, well, whatever. And then just grabs him and his fucking fingers go all like, get to that guy's head. Oh, it's crazy. It was a good episode, but they just ruined Bizarro.
I know.
It's like hurt me because I'm like, I loved Bizarro. And after that cliffhanger in Gemini, I expected more.
Dude, we only got 3 episodes of Bizarro, and then I remember after that they were like teasing. They're like, "Well, maybe Bizarro can come back."
Yeah, they kept.
And
Even
then
I remember like a sneak peek of season 10 where they're like doing an interview at like the summer beforehand. They were
yeah,
like, "Oh yeah, we might see some like returning good like characters, good and bad." And in that like montage, it showed Bizarro flying from like the end of season 6. And I'm like, "Oh,
I kind of give them a break though, because at least it was Clark Luthor.
yeah."
So I
Clark
was like,
Luthor's great.
yeah, yeah. So I was like, all right, at least it's like another bad version of Clark.
Yeah, I would have loved to have seen all 3 of them.
Could you
And they
imagine
just
how
had
crazy?
Cal there too somehow.
Could you imagine how nuts Tom Welling probably would have went if he was like, "You got all 3 of these in one scene"?
That would have been cool. I would have liked it.
11's a really bad episode. That's
Should
Siren.
have been good. That's the thing. Some of these should have been good. Like, you tell me Green Arrow's coming back. I'm like, hell yeah. I get excited.
It's his only episode of the season.
Yeah, I remember them saying at the beginning of the season when it was supposed to be like a full season before the writer's strike, he was supposed to be in like a handful of episodes.
Yeah.
And then it had to get condensed to just that one. I'm like, okay, cool, Green Arrow. And they're like, yeah, we're going to introduce Black Canary. I'm like, that makes sense. Yeah, they're like lovers in the comics. I'm like, that's cool. But the version of Black Canary is atrocious.
And the actress is atrocious too.
What's her name? She played Abaddon in Supernatural.
Elena Huffman.
I thought she's a lot better as Abaddon.
Yeah, but she still wasn't that great.
Black Canary is not good. The writing's really bad, and her acting is really bad, and she has zero chemistry with Justin Hartley. What are we doing? Yeah, that's also the episode where Lois finds out about Oliver.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it is, isn't it?
She's like, "You telling me between spooning in the sheets, you were running around with a compound bow?"
Poor Lois.
Yeah, that was a disappointing episode. I remember being excited, and then Black Canary. Also, like the visual of like her being like,
yeah, I hated it. That's why when they did it in Birds of Prey, I was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, it's tough to pull off, and Smallville did a weird try.
Yeah,
where they sucked the sound away when it happened. It was weird, and also this episode had that like equilibrium like gun fu fight between Lex and Oliver. But in the mansion and Green Arrow and Lex are like both have their like weapons and they're like punching and shooting, and I'm like, what are we doing? How does Lex know how to do this? We've never seen Lex do anything like this.
Where is he? Try looking over your shoulder.
Uh, 12 is Fracture.
It's a pretty good one. I like that one. Except the whole Kara in Detroit with amnesia part of it. But the Lex part of it is good.
Yeah.
Being inside Lex's mind and like little Alexander running around. I liked all that.
Get out of my head! Is that when he drags him into the fire? Or no, that's Descent,
Descent.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. 13. Do you remember what 13 is?
I do. It's called Stride Gum, the commercial. Yeah, it's a terrible episode.
Apologize.
You tell me Pete Ross is coming back, I'm gonna get excited. And then the moment the episode started, I'm like, oh no, where he's like at a concert and he's like a groupie for One Republic or whatever. And then he gets like he's like chewing on like kryptonite stride gum because the stride gum S looks sort of like a Superman S, I guess.
Of course.
It was so stupid. Then he gets stretchy powers. And I'm like, ah.
The only
like
good
moment
part is,
he's like, no, and his arms like stretching.
the only good part is when Lex breaks his arm.
I had wanted Pete to come back for years. Like that was like a dream. I'm like, get Pete the Boss Ross back, and then they bring him back, and it's a shit episode. And Pete's an asshole the whole episode to everyone. I'm like, what the fuck?
Hey, look out!
Hey, what happened?
I finally brought my game up to your level, Clark.
What happened to you?
It doesn't matter. The other night, I saved this girl, and I finally got a taste of what it felt like to be you.
Yeah.
Such a letdown.
14 is Traveler.
Yeah, the Veritas stuff and Patricia Swan and all that.
That's the one where like Clark's like in like the like Wolverine like bath.
He's in a
like,
kryptonite cage.
Yeah.
And then Kara gets her powers back and she frees him, and Lionel's involved, and Clark doesn't trust Lionel anymore. And I'm like, whatever.
15 Veritas.
Yeah. Yeah.
The ending's cool.
Yeah. I Brainiac being around is one of the highlights of the season.
I love too how like the car pulls over at the end, and then it's like, why did we stop? And you actually find out that like Lionel had like Patricia Swan killed.
Well, it was Lex actually.
Oh, it was Lex. Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, she well,
I think it's a good episode, but they probably should have just left the finale there.
Yeah, I don't know. Like Brainiac, I like having around. I think he's the only real highlight of this episode.
Yeah.
Because his first showing up at the farm was cool, but they never make it real clear why he needs Kara.
Yeah.
Like he's like, oh, I want, like you find out, oh, he wants to go back to Krypton like before it explodes. But like, I guess it's her bracelet, maybe. But they don't ever really make it clear why.
I feel like they always like reference her bracelet and then they do nothing with it.
Yeah, so I think it was probably supposed to be that, but they don't make that clear. Also, like this is the episode I talked about a few episodes ago where there's a really weird writing or delivery where she's like, "Oh, Brainiac, look at all these electrical grids. Well, he's a computer. What does a computer run on? Energy." I'm like, oh god. But this also has when Brainiac ambushes Lana, and he just points his finger at her head, and his little tendrils come out and go to her eyeballs.
Thank God.
And then she starts bleeding blood, crying blood. And then there's a creepy ass scene where she's at the farm, and she's just like, the tea is like screaming, and like everything's cooking, and she's just standing there as everything's burning. And Clark's like, "Lana, are you okay?" And she's not moving. And then he like grabs her, and her eyes are like fucking pure white.
Don't they show her from the back at first?
Yeah, it's creepy as fuck. And then she's like,
you know what it reminded me of? The little girl that comes out of the TV in The Ring. Something like that, like just like, or just like somebody just like completely like paralyzed with like the most like stoic look on their face, because she literally looks like this. Like,
yeah, it was really disturbing because they were like, oh yeah, she feels everything and it's super painful, but she also can't do anything unless Brainiac wants her to.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's really dark and really evil. Then the very end of this episode, when Clark's like in the hospital with her, and she's like, "You're too late, Kal-El." I'm like, ah.
I remember that scene now.
That was really depressing. Yeah, it's a weird episode though, because it feels like a finale, but not.
You know what the good part of that was though? Lana was gone for the next 4 episodes.
That's true. I had to thank Brainiac for that.
Yeah. He did something.
Yeah, thanks, man. Good to have you back.
James Marsters, just don't play Piccolo again.
Wasn't his fault.
I know it wasn't. 16's Descent, which is probably the best episode of the season.
Yeah, probably. It's a really good one.
Yeah. I was raised in your shadow. Now you're going to die in mine. No one will even know your name.
That's a pretty...
I was raised in your shadow. Now you're gonna die in mine. No one will even remember your name.
I just wish that my one wish with that scene has always been Lionel should have put on opera music when he came into the office. In the early seasons, there was always a running thing where Lionel was always listening to opera. And, like, that would have been even better.
Yeah.
Like, and I also, as much as I like that it starts the episode, I feel like that big of a moment should be like at the end. And it was supposed to initially be at like the end of Veritas.
Yeah.
Like that should be like it just feels weird to put it in the beginning.
Yeah, like right before the credits too, right?
Yeah, it should have been like, because like there's that big dramatic moment, and then it's like somebody say, I'm like, no, that should be at the end of an episode.
Yeah,
like
I do like how it ends though with Clark and Lex as the only ones in attendance at Lionel's funeral, and then you see Clark show up, and then Lex just walks away, gives him like the look like I fucking hate you.
They also have that great scene where they're like arguing, where Clark's like, you killed your father or whatever, and he's like, and what about Jonathan Kent, Clark? You think all that time like something messed with his heart or whatever?
Yeah.
I tried to be your friend, Lex. But all you care about is power and control.
This is Smallville! Meteor freaks, alien ships, cryptic symbols. These threats are real. Someone had to take control. Someone has to protect the world.
Listen to yourself, Lex. You're so caught up in your own delusions, you've lost track of reality.
Have I? Then let's talk about something you can't deny. After years of pleading with my father to show me some compassion, he turned to you with open arms. Now, what would a worldly billionaire have in common with a simple farm boy?
Maybe he just knew he could trust me.
Of course. Everyone can trust Clark Kent. You're the perfect son. So why did Jonathan Kent always seem so stressed? I mean, was raising the perfect son really that much work? I wonder how much of a strain it put on his heart.
Are you blaming me for my father's death? Are you? You're the guilty one, Lex, not me. And this time you're gonna own up to what you've done. I know you killed Lionel.
Who's delusional now?
I have proof.
Well, I also love the scene too that I alluded to before, where it's like you have like little kid Lex like talking to Lex. 'Cause he's like, "Get out of my head." He's like, "Get out of my head," and he just drags him into the.
That is like the cutest little kid too.
I know, but like I love what that symbolized though, where it symbolized like Lex is like, okay, he's forgetting about that part now. He's like full blown like evil.
Yeah, he's like destroying his like innocence. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was good. It was a really good episode.
Yeah, it's probably
There's also Gina, who's terrifying.
I think it's the best episode of the season, honestly.
Yeah, probably.
I would say either that, or when we talk about a couple episodes, either that or Apocalypse. But yeah, I think those are the two like highlights for me. 17 is a sleeper because it's called Sleeper.
I remember nothing about this episode except Jimmy Olsen has to be like a secret agent. And he like dances with Chloe at a nightclub. That's all I remember about it.
They give him like Q gadgets.
Yeah, he has like his little what do you call it?
Like thing.
Cufflink, yeah. That like shoots out like a dart or some bullshit. It's a terrible episode. I don't want to talk about it.
18 is Apocalypse. Great episode.
It is a good one.
Yeah.
It's like the 150th, I think. I think that was like the big thing. It was like a milestone.
150th, where Jor-El sends Clark to an alternate reality.
Yeah, where he's like, the Kents have like an actual adopted son that's not an alien named Clark, and like Lois is a reporter and Lex is the president and Kara is the head of his security, and I'm like,
oh yeah, I remember that. Apparently Lana married a French philanthropist in that episode too.
Yeah, it's a pretty good one. It's like fun, like seeing that alternate world.
Kara uses an alias while she's like the head of like Lex's security. So it's like, oh, Linda Danvers. Oh, like Danvers. Oh, well, no, I'm thinking of Carol Danvers. Never mind.
It's Linda something like that though.
Yeah, it's Linda. It's Linda Danvers. And I was gonna say, oh, it's like her alias, like Kara Danvers, but I was thinking of Captain Marvel for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 19 is Quest.
Not a fan.
Yeah.
Lex going to that church, and there's that guy who's like Jason Teague's dad, and he's like, "Oh, the Traveler," blah 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 blah. And I'm like, the Veritas stuff just. Like, I don't care about a bunch of rich
cool.
people.
Like it's cool, like bringing the Teagues back, but like
Sure, but that's never how I. Well, it's funny because you see Jason Teague's dad in a flashback in this season,
yeah.
and he acts and looks nothing like this guy that they have. I'm like, I don't know. The Veritas stuff just never was interesting. Well, maybe it would have been cooler in like season 4 to like introduce that. Season 7, I'm like,
it's too late at this point.
Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, like that should have been introduced when they were like doing like the whole Virgil Swan thing in the early seasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's way too late at this point.
Yeah.
And then 20, probably the worst finale that the show has had, Arctic.
I just remember it was so anticlimactic. Like by the end of it, I was like, whatever.
Dude, it was also the perfect moment to get Clark to fly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because dude, like everything comes crashing down on both Lex and Clark, and then like so you see they're like doing like a zoom out of the fortress like collapsing, and then like they just do like a still shot of like the fortress collapsed for like 20 seconds, and it's like, okay, something's gonna happen, credits. It's like what?
Yeah,
dude,
it just wasn't a letdown.
Dude, and then like. This is the last episode that Michael Rosenbaum was in until the finale. Like, what a shitty way to go out.
Even his last scene, like, isn't that amazing. Like, it could have been better. Like the fight in the fortress, like the argument, like, it's my birthright. Like after all the pain, I'm like,
I love the fact that he knows now. But
yeah, but then eventually that doesn't know. Yeah, like that was cool. Like some of it's cool. Like Brainiac getting killed by Clark was kind of cool, but even that scene, it was like, oh, I'm just gonna push you into electrical stuff, and then I'm just gonna shove electric shit in you, and he'll be like, oh, I get overpowered.
Lana's randomly fixed in this episode because she leaves Clark a goodbye.
Well, because Brainiac dies, so his thing wears off.
Yeah.
But like Brainiac is like, they're like, where's Kara? Because he like replaces Kara, and then like, where's Kara? And then it's like, oh, you'll never find her. And then you see, oh, she's up in the Phantom Zone. I'm like, okay, so another thing that happened to Clark. Cool. Like, thanks for continuing to retread on old shit.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I liked Brainiac attacking Chloe because that ended up being interesting the next season.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, overall, I mean, I liked Lois giving Clark the Daily Planet application because it was like, thank God we're going towards Superman again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the whole season, man, wasn't good.
Yeah, there were only like
I feel bad being this negative about Smallville, but like this season is not good.
It's rough.
It's really rough.
It is very rough. There's only a handful of episodes that are good, and like we said, like there's not a string of good ones in a row because they're just like counteracted by like a string of like 3 or 4 bad ones.
Yeah, the closest thing we have to like consistent good episodes is like Gemini and Persona back to back, and then it's not good pretty much most of the time.
Exactly.
Yeah, season 7, like we said, definitely the worst season. By far.
Yeah.
There's nothing that even comes close.
It's our longest video, so yeah, we did talk a long time about 7. Yeah, I'm not a fan of 7. And I think the writer strike gets too much flack for like interfering with the season because it was never like they never had like a plan. I don't think from the get go.
It didn't feel like it.
No.
At least as far as Supergirl.
Yeah. So I mean, it already wasn't that good to begin with. But yeah, huge mixed bag. It's got some great moments. It's got some great episodes. Mostly everything with Lex in this season I love. Mostly. There's some stuff I don't like him finding Lana in China.
I loved Bizarro, and then they took him from me after ruining him.
Brainiac's great, but the rest of it's just no.
Yeah,
Any other closing thoughts on season 7?
it's bad.
It's very bad.
I hate to say it, Smallville. I love you, but this is not a good year.
I mean, but if you have a show that lasts this long, you're gonna have like a.
You
you're
are.
gonna
It's
have
like
a season-
Supernatural. You're gonna have roller coasters of.
Yeah.
Like season 4 of Smallville is not one of my favorites, but even I think that is like a much better quality than 7.
You mean you think Witches is a lot better than 7? Well, at least
I would take
the
Witches over Supergirl.
the Witches thing is stupid, but at least like they knew where they were going with that.
Yeah, eventually felt like it had a purpose, whereas Supergirl just felt like,
Oh, let's just do a carbon copy of Clark.
and just kind of have her continue to take the storylines while Clark is farming.
That's our Boy Scout.
Yeah.
So that's our review of season 7 of Smallville. Not a fan, either of us, of the season. Pat, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at @thisPatGuy, along on the Cinemania World podcasts occasionally. Yeah, and Alex and I got some podcasts which better be out by this point.
You can find me on my official website, alexmaddenmovies.mystrikingly.com. All my social media links are there. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. My name is Alex. That was Pat. We'll see you at the movies somewhere.
Somebody say